Hello and welcome to the WiEA Pod. My name is Clare Hughes and I'm a proud co-founder and board member of WiEA. Each week we bring you a refreshing mix of inspiration, insight, honesty and fun as we sit down with our amazing guests from the WiEA community. As always, a big thank you to our partners at Digital Sparks for making this podcast possible. If you're not aware of their work, check them out on Instagram. And if you're enjoying the conversations, please spread the word and share to your friends and on your socials. And let us know who you'd like to hear from on the WiEA Pod and put them in the hot seat. So let's dive in to our next guest. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce to the WiEA Pod the wonderful Julie Burns, who is another northern powerhouse of a woman. We get a lot of these. There's obviously something in the northern water, maybe. Julie has got her own business, but she comes from a fairly varied background, which we'll get into during the course of the next 30 minutes. So Julie, welcome to the pod. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today.
So I mentioned that you've got a varied background. So you've been in agency for 24 years, but tell me how you started.
In agency or just go back, okay.
Going back to when you left school, because I know it was very different.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town where there wasn't much to do, no career progression. So for me, I started in performing arts when I went to college straight from school. It seemed a good fit to me because it was something I was already doing in youth at a young age as well. So I was dancing and doing performing arts. Very fortunately got work down, actually not too far from here. I was living in Turnham Green and I went to work in Greece. I then went to work in Japan for years. So that was my kind of journey straight from school, yeah.
So were you a theatrical family? Did you go to the theatre a lot as children?
No, not really. I think where I come from, there wasn't really much to do. So it was like, okay, what can we do that's fun? And I really enjoyed dancing. And I suppose what child doesn't enjoy dancing, especially a young girl at that age in the 80s. So I'd done a lot of youth dance and I've got quite a large family. So I think at the age that I was, and I was the second born, it was kind of fighting for the attention of 5 kids. So I think the entertainment, and we're all quite a funny, elaborate family as well. So naturally, I wanted to do something performing.
You were just showing off?
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't lost that.
Don't ever lose it, Julie. Don't ever lose it. So you left performing arts college. You went to Greece and then to Japan.
Yes.
Which was, quite an adventure for a girl from your background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think prior to that, when I was working in school, I was doing multiple jobs, paper round, babysitting, selling Avon. So I'd always say that I was an entrepreneur from a very young age, and I knew that I wanted to do something and also do something completely different to what, a lot of my friends, no discredit to them, but they were like, oh, I'm going to go and do hair and makeup and stuff like that. And I just wanted the opportunity to get out of where I was and have a career path. So that naturally just flowed for me. And fortunately, when I was living in Greece, not only was I doing dancing, we were able to make TV commercials. We were put on billboards. For beer companies. We were, getting taken to places by people, treated like royalty. So for me to grow up in such a small town and then be living the other side of the world at 18, 19 and
that's incredible.
Being chauffeured around and doing all of these things was like a real eye-opener to me. But again, it was very dangerous as well because, we were so young, we were vulnerable. And my parents weren't in the position to pay for me for a flight to come back. So actually when I went over there, they were like, if you go, you've got to figure it out. Because when I was in Greece, there was actually 1 week, we ended up sleeping on a roof because we had nowhere to live. And you just don't see 17-year-olds doing that now.
Who are you working for out there?
So we work for an independent dance agency that were based in London then, a London dance agency. So they set up the contracts for you. But you had to move around a lot and you were placed in different hotels.
I guess is that what happened now? there'd be a duty of care to make sure there was accommodation provided. You wouldn't just send a group of 17, 18-year-old girls out to Greece or Japan and say, here's your contract, but everything else is up to you. But
Absolutely, yeah.
so do you think that the whole of that experience has made you more resilient as a person?
Yeah, almost certainly, because I think I always say, and I say this to my children as well, and also some people who come to work for me, especially the younger generation, that I do believe travel is the best form of education because you learn so much. You learn so much internally and externally as well. So yeah, it has made me resilient, and doing the job that I do has made me very resilient. But
I guess probably thinking on your feet as well. You know, when you're in Greece and you've nowhere to stay, you've got to think about how one night on the beach or where on the rooftop is one thing, but you need to sort that out going forward. So
yeah.
Yeah. So what age were you when you came back, and what happened next?
I was 20 when I came back, and then I applied for a job because agency was a big thing then when I was younger, to apply for agencies for temp work. So especially because I've been working away, there was not really much. I'm putting dancing on your CV. People are like, well, what other skills have you got? So I went to work at BT in Warrington, and they gave the best customer service training, the training that you get for 6 weeks before they even put you on the phone. So they want to make sure that your customer service level. No, absolutely not. And I know that when I'm training people, because you just aren't able to do that, especially as a small independent agent. But with that training, they gave you how to deal with customers, how to deliver calls, how to read scripts, how to understand the functionalities of the software that you were using, which are completely different because we're talking, this is like 1998 to 1999. And I worked there for about a year. And
as
then
a temp?
As a temp.
Yep.
Great. They put you in like a team of 8. So a lot of it's commission based. So you're on a basic salary plus commission. So that was the first job that introduced me to working with commission as well, and how you could do that, and working in sales and very customer focused. And I'm always grateful for that training because I think a lot of what's instilled into me today is key from that training at BT. And then from that, I went to work at Comet. So, you know, when you're sitting with the headphones and you log in the repair, someone's washing machine breaks down. I'd done that, and then I fell pregnant with my son. And I took time off from there on maternity leave. And from that's where my property journey began, because my son's grandmother, she was a property manager, lettings manager for a large company in Liverpool.
Right.
And we're going back to the days when they're all just sitting at the desk, still smoking, piles and piles of files, just literally everywhere. It was just an absolute, I won't even say it on camera, but it was just a mess. It was an absolute shit show.
Friends.
And it was just, you know, the directors had their own offices and you didn't dare speak to them, and they were, you know, that hierarchy. And she was just so inundated with property management. I think she was looking after about 800 then by herself, and there was no properties by herself. She had just files everywhere. The phones were just ringing constantly, and she said, can you come in while you're on maternity pay? We'll pay you some cash, you know, and just help in the maintenance department. And that was my introduction to property, and that was 2001.
We hear this so often about people just falling into agency. And then, you know, your background, your training with customer service and sales, they're transferable skills, aren't they? And when you find the property sector, if it works for you, it just works for you then, doesn't it? So did you love it straight away?
No, God, no.
Especially with a portfolio of 800 properties. I mean, that's a lot of shit to deal with, because property management is tough.
It is tough, and I think a lot of people back then were very set in their ways as well, and it was their way or no way. There was no compromise. There was no conversation with a manager or a director. You just didn't have it. You were there as an administrator, and that was that. Just get the job done. And I was thrown in at maintenance. And I do think it's good that you are taught maintenance from the start, especially if you are dealing with it, because that's where a lot of the crap comes from. You know, you do get people shouting at you down the phone. I've got lots of threads and people, you know, people were not coordinating things properly. So you just got the brunt of it. So I think it is good that you are thrown into property, if you are going to be doing property management, to really sit and work within the maintenance division, because ultimately a property needs to be managed well, and that is a core part of lettings and management. So for me, it was tough. I didn't like it. I'd done it for about 3 years at Venmore's, which is one of the biggest branches then in Liverpool. And
is that the one right in the centre?
Yeah, so
Water Street then?
It was Stanley Street, so where the Eleanor Rigby statue is. So it was the old office where I was originally, and they've moved out of the city now. They've got branches outside. And I stayed there for 3 years, dealt with all the property maintenance aspects. Again, learning really key lessons and not having to do anything to do with the lettings or any other side of the property management. It was just purely maintenance. And then I decided to leave and go to work with a development company after that.
So a big independent then was, to a development company to do what?
So I went to work for Beetham, the Beetham organisation. So they've got developments, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham. And they had a property management division within that company. And at that time, it was called City Housing. So it was part of the Beetham organisation.
This kind of a build to rent?
Yeah, they were built to rent, but they also had a portfolio of properties that they'd acquired over the years. So they had apartments, rentals across Liverpool that needed management. And there was a couple who were the directors then of City Housing division within the Beetham organisation. And they needed an administrator because their portfolio was growing. At that time, they just had the groundbreaker for Beetham Tower, the original one on Old Hall Street, which is next door to the Passport Office, before they put West Tower. So they knew the plans of Beetham were just going to keep growing. They knew Manchester, Birmingham was coming up in the next couple of years. So they wanted to onboard somebody to come and work for them. And I was really surprised actually that I got the job, because it was the first time that I've been in a boardroom, and it was one of those moments like flash dance where you've got this big huge table and there's one person up there and 2 people there, and I'm just sitting there like 23, like, oh my God.
But you were coming 24. 3 years of experience in that very role. So why did you feel intimidated by that? Because you're used to performing.
Yeah, I think because I'd just done the property maintenance and not the lettings. So this role then was to be going out and doing viewings. And actually it was quite fortunate, because after the interview, and I got the job because I was surprised that I got it. And also being put in that room, and you know, the guy who ran Beetham was a lovely guy. We were very posh, and you know, it was, you just naturally feel intimidated. At 24, you're just like, oh my God. And the kid, you know, James was only a baby. I'd had Rob and then my daughter at that point, because I'd had them close together. I don't know why. I think we still get that now, and you can still sit in rooms where you feel, you know, imposter syndrome, or you know, I am very confident person, but I think at the time, I think it was just the environment that I was in, and I felt intimidated, but
you
got it
mentioned
anyway.
imposter syndrome. Do you think that women suffer from imposter syndrome more than men? Or do we talk about it more?
I think we talk about it more, because I know for a fact my husband does, and he's a very confident person. He wouldn't sit in half of the rooms that I would. He wouldn't visit half the places that I visited alone. But I think we both, you know, I think men and women do suffer with it, but women are more vocal, which we are naturally with a lot of things anyway.
See, I think it's a good thing. We tend to talk more, don't we? Empathise more with our friends, colleagues, family. And, you know, men probably try to mask. So 3 years with the corporate, then went into the development. How long were you there for?
Well, I stayed at we're working for those 2 directors for about 10 years.
Right, okay.
So what they branched off.
Mum, you've got 2 young children.
Yeah.
Juggling all of that.
Yes.
How was that?
All right. I think For me, I went through a separation as well, so I split up with the children's father. Just throw it in the hat, yeah. Throw it in there.
Yeah. The mix.
And it was when I started at Venmore's, I was only doing 9 till 3. Then when I went to Beetham, I think the kids were about 3 and 4. Their dad had a corporate job. He worked in the city, so it worked quite well. So he'd finish work and then go and pick them up from nursery and then come and get me. Or if I had the car because I was out doing appointments. So I started doing 9 till 5 and it worked well. My children always went to breakfast club, school, after school club. The couple that I worked for didn't really have anybody else to help them. So a lot of the time if the children were sick, it would be, okay, your dad's going to have to come and get them. It was challenging. It was, you know, it was one of those companies where they didn't really allow you to take the time off. But then if the kids were sick when they were a little bit older, you could probably bring them in if they just had a bit of a cold and they'd come in and work with you.
A certain amount of flexibility.
A little bit, wasn't too much. But
Do you
I
think
just
it's
worked
different
with it.
today for women that have got young children?
I mean, yeah, from what I've seen and the way that I operate, I certainly do. And I'm more understanding and empathetic to that because I've been through that and I know the struggles. Because when I was younger, people probably went through the same as me, but they carried that with them. So they said, well, you know, that old, well, when I was working, when I was younger, I had to do that. I've not brought that forward with my business. So if staff are ill or there's a problem, I'd say, look, just take the time. You know, health is more important and looking after your children. But I never had that opportunity when I was working. And parts of it are kind of respect that they were running a busy business and needed someone. But then it would have been nice to have a bit more flexibility. But I think you've always got to have that common ground as well, haven't you? In that,
of course you have.
Not to be too nice.
You know, you're there to do a job, and that job has to be done. But you know, I think employers that give flexibility will get loyalty in return. You know, which is probably right. Which brings us quite nicely onto your own business. So, Freyja North. You established that 4 years ago?
Yeah, well, 4 years it'll be in September.
Right, okay.
So when I left Beetham, I actually took a couple of years out. Just life, I think the property industry got very cutthroat, found it very toxic, which is why I love the group, but we'll get onto that. It was very toxic, didn't like the environment's too competitive. So I left and I just thought, what can I do? Being a creative person, studying performing arts before, I wanted to do photography. So I went and put myself into university at the ripe old age, I think, of 32.
Good for you.
And I do remember someone at the college saying, you know, oh, I think it's a bit weird that you're going to be with 18 and 19-year-olds. I said, you know, I can still apply, you know, and do it. And I did it. And then I'd done a teaching degree and then I'd done a master's in photography.
As you do.
And then, as you do, done that in a year. I actually spent quite a lot of time in the West Bank working with Palestinian families. And I won an award for that. So portrait photography that I was studying as part of my master's and more to do with the research and the methodologies and research behind it and people that I wanted to work with. Originally, I was going over to work with the IDF and do portraiture with the soldiers, but an event happened while I was in Jerusalem that wasn't very nice.
Right.
It was really traumatic for me. And I just completely changed my research module while I was there, studying my master's. I went alone. My husband, who's now my husband now, says I'm absolutely crazy because all he could hear was explosions, things going off, and I'm just there taking pictures. Came back, won awards, had exhibitions, and then...
With your photography?
With photography.
Right.
Done some stuff in film, TV. I've got lots of friends who work in TV and film production in Liverpool, so fortunately they gave me opportunities to work on set, work with quite a lot of people.
So you've always maintained that link with performing arts and sort of creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, you know, a lot of my clients are in that industry still as well. So it's always, for me, I like to keep in constant contact with everybody that I work with. And no matter how difficult the situations are when you are working with someone, to never burn a bridge with them, because it has, with my journey, gone completely full circle. You know, a client of mine now who I used to rent properties for 20 years ago has now just given me my first £700,000 listing since starting sales a few months ago. So it's really important for me to remain consistent with friendships and people who have worked within the past.
Network, and you don't know with those relationships what it's going to lead to. So doesn't always maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
So you had how many years out of property?
It was around 3.5 years.
And you did a degree and a postgrad, or 2 degrees?
2 degrees, one in photography, one in teaching, and a master's in a year full time with 2 kids as a single mum. But then I was then with my partner, and who's now my husband. A lot of people started saying to me, get back into property. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do lettings. So I actually went, a guy approached me actually on LinkedIn and said, would you be interested in working with international investors from Hong Kong to purchase properties, property sourcing? So yeah, okay. My husband said, just get back into it, give it a go. The photography is kind of not working out because it's really challenging, you know, unless you've got that work coming in. And then I went to work with an investment company sourcing deals, working with lots of overseas investors for about 2 years. And then I set up on my own 3.5 years ago and started doing similar.
And what were the challenges? You'd always been in employed roles. So what were the challenges to set up on your own? What did you find? Or didn't you find a challenge?
Yeah, I think for me, I see it quite a lot of the time where people say that, you know, they are scared to go it alone. And I think now, when I did go it alone, my daughter was at university then, and my son had already left home. He was living with his father. So there wasn't that responsibility of paying out for nursery fees and things like that. Of course, there's mortgage and bills and everything else. And because I was doing property sourcing at that time, with property sourcing, you can collect deposits from clients who are purchasing properties that you're buying off other agents or other vendors. So unlike other people who are going independent, for me, I was able to bring in money straight away.
But that's cash flow. And I hear this all the time, thinking about setting up on their own, you know, either with a traditional model or self-employment. It's that cash flow, you know, how do I pay the bills in the first 6 months? So you had an answer for that.
I did, and I kind of just winged it, which I always do with everything. And I'm a real self-believer, and I do think hard work does pay off. You've just got to be accountable for your actions, and if you're going to do something, do it and stick to it. And everybody who knows me, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm damn well going to do it.
I have to say, you are an absolute poster girl for hard work. I mean, hard graft, you know, right from doing the paper rounds, you know, as a youngster, to what you've all, you know, done throughout your life. So how's the business going now? So you've launched sales as well. You started with investments and lettings, and you've just launched sales and opened a new branch as well.
Yeah, I have. So I didn't want to shop. I'll be honest, I was like, oh no, let's just stay on.
Were you working from home or a serviced office?
I had an office, a serviced office, and it worked really well. But then, yes, I was doing the property sourcing, which then led into the lettings and management. Naturally, of course, I didn't want to do it initially, but it fell into it. And then I've now acquired just over 100 lets in the last 3 years. I think I actually got those lets within the first 18 months, so I got quite a lot. Coming off the back of recommendations, purely recommendations. You used the word
acquired. You didn't buy them.
No, I got them through recommendation and property sourcing.
So it's organic growth.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That is rapid organic growth.
It is.
Properties in 18 months.
I didn't know that until I actually posted something in the group, and everyone was like, no, that is amazing, the fact that you've not bought those off anybody, and they would just come in. Because I think sometimes when you're working for yourself, you forget that. You can't see from an outsider looking in. You're just so focused on what you're doing.
It's working so hard.
And everybody was like, use Julie, use Julie, use Julie. And the client was telling another client, then another client, then another client. And it was just great. And then people asking me to source properties, people were asking me to do tours. I was going out to Hong Kong, providing educational visits on residential lettings and management. Wow. Because of course, lots of investors are buying in the UK, but they don't understand UK law and legislation regards to property management. So they became very frustrated. So by providing that education, I then acquired more investors. So spending 8-9 grand for 4 days in Hong Kong and hiring a room and explaining Section 21, what are they? You can't just drag a tenant out. They were like, okay, she knows what she's talking about.
Culture,
Let's go to
it must
her.
be very different. And also there's going to be a whole new raft of education necessary when the Renters' Rights Bill goes through, but that's another story. I know that, so now you've got this lovely office. I've seen photographs of it, not been there yet. I know that community is really important to you. So what do you do within your community that helps your business?
So at the moment, we just moved. I opened the shop in February, and for me, the way that I'm standing out in the community at the moment is my window displays. So I want it to become a seasonal thing. So that consistency of that's the estate agents, that's always got something up about the community. So yesterday I had the guy out and I asked him to do a Liverpool and Everton theme. It's fantastic. And it just came to me the other day and I said, okay, can you put Everton have moved on one side and Liverpool are winning? And it was kind of linked together to say like, you two could be winning and moving if you use Freyja North Limited. So within the community, I'm a huge advocate for Liverpool and everything that happens in our city. I'll give anyone like photographers, people who want to do work experience, schools who want me to come and talk about entrepreneurship. So anything to do with Liverpool and the community, not necessarily the area that I'm based in, but within the whole community of Merseyside. It's so important for me to be able to educate other people, work with people and celebrate our city.
And do you go out to schools?
I'm going to start doing that soon, to go out to secondary schools and, you know, they do get the education and training and they are told to go to college and university, but to go in and explain, it's not the be all and end all and you can
do you know what, I think
work
that's so
hard.
important. I think the careers advice that young people are getting in schools, it's kind of, well, do you know what you want to do? No, not really. Well, do some A-levels and go to university.
They haven't got a clue. Yeah.
They're not giving them options. Actually, there are quite a lot of apprenticeships out there. There are companies like you who can go and do work experience for. And in estate agents, there are really varied careers. So it's not just about selling houses or letting houses. Loads of careers within an estate agent. I could go on forever, but I think careers advice in schools needs a good old shake-up. We're getting to the end of we've only got 30 minutes, so we're getting towards the end of our time, but there's lots of things I wanted to speak to you about, but I know you're a very active member of Women in Estate Agency Facebook group. What does the group mean to you?
Everything. I think the group for me is a safe place. It's a place where there's no judgment. Certainly now there isn't. I know you've given it a bit of a shake-up and kicked a few people off and you're on the ball, which is great. But for me, it's a place where if I want to post openly or anonymously, which I do sometimes, it's just a place where sometimes I'm going to be able to be told, no, that's not right. Don't say that, you're wrong. Or a place where someone will say, calm down, take a moment. And also a place where you can be celebrated as a woman in an estate agency. And to me, it is like my Bible. It's my little reassurance, my little pillow, my little blanket at the end of the day. I know I can always go there as a safe place.
I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't in the group, either because they've not heard of it before or because they're a man and they can't be in the group. And I think sometimes people think that it's everything's going to be a sort of real personal issue, or it's going to be women's problems. But a lot of it is just, I'm having this difficulty with, or this situation with a colleague at work. And they give the scenario and they get advice. And I know that you're often answering people's questions and giving advice. So you're a fantastic supporter of the group. And being so active. Just makes it so much better for everybody. How long have you been in the group? When did you discover it?
A couple of years ago. I can't remember who it was that introduced me to it, but I tell everyone. I was at a property market conference a while back, and then I think a couple of members joined afterwards. I stood up in the middle of the room and I was talking about the group and when I was asking a question. So I think shout it from the rooftops, because I certainly will do for as long as I can.
I mean, we have about 4,500 members now, as you know, but there are many more thousands of women out there. So carry on sort of banging that drum for us.
Yeah.
Right. So one last question. We ask all our guests this. Who would you like to see sitting in that chair for a future episode of the WiEA podcast?
Emma.
Emma
From Emma Redley, please, if we can get Emma.
I think that's a great shout.
I do too. She's so amazing. She's so cute. And we speak all the time, but I'd really like to learn more about her, because I know everything about her business, but to learn her journey would be amazing. But that's a really difficult question because there's so many amazing women on there. There really are.
We do have the occasional man sitting in that seat as well. So if there's any sort of male colleagues that you know of as well. But
yeah, I do. I can think of a few, yeah. And maybe my mentor that I've just taken on from Agents Do, because I didn't know about Agents Together. And I wouldn't have known about that if I wasn't in the group. So there's a lot that you can take from the group. It's really fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining us and coming down to London from Liverpool, especially to talk to us today. So thank you very much, Julie.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that concludes another episode of the WiEA Pod.